Okay, good morning. Today we're going to go over a couple of new things. One, the global MLS merge finally went through. So while all the paperwork is not perfect, we're going to go over the documents I do want you to be using and that we should start using. And we'll talk about some of them and some of the other documents. I know, like Melissa, we've already had some discussions on some of them. Amanda, I know that you've gone through and reviewed a lot of them as, legal counsel. So we're going to talk about the listing documents. And then we're also going to make you guys my beta testers and demo something that Kayla and I are pretty excited about. And we'll see, get some feedback from you all. So I'll save that till later. So should take about 2 hours. Yesterday, we kind of did it in an hour and a half. So if you have any questions, this is an open conversation. I want people to ask questions if you have them. And everybody has packets, actually. Jackie, let me see if I can get you one. I'll email it over to you. So that you can follow along, not just on the screen if you want to print this out. I think this is it. Yeah. Okay. Give me a sec and I will email it to you. I need to pop this out. Hide. That's you. That's your email from earlier. I want to attach a file. Thank you. If you're following along on the video, you don't need to be watching this part. I'm sorry. Okay. Jackie, that'll send to you as soon as it uploads. No problem. Okay. Going into it. All right. So when you take a listing, these are some of the documents that I would like you to use or that you should be using. The first that I want to go over that we haven't really gone over before is the property information form. This is a Romeo Team Realty document. It is not required, but it is a good idea and better service to provide this to sellers. This is not a document you should be filling out yourselves. This is similar to the property condition disclosure where you send it to the seller and have them fill it out. Reason being, they're going to say, things like favorite aspects of the home and neighborhood, and the sellers can be a lot more honest about that than we can because of fair housing. So they can say things like really family-friendly neighborhood, the kids play in the street, whereas we can't really say those things. It's not something that we should be describing because of familial status and all that fun jazz. So this is, it gives a bit more detail than the property condition disclosure because it talks about all the appliances and the ages of them and things like that. So when I get back, we're going to roll out the DocuSign as a team because I've purchased DocuSign for the whole company. So if you're paying for your own DocuSign right now, you're not going to have to do that. Probably by the end of May, you'll be able to cancel and get a prorated refund because I've paid for everybody to have their own logins. And basically DocuSign will be used similarly to the way that Zip Forms is used now, where you all have your own login and I can push templates to it and things like that. So it's going to be a way to streamline things and make it a lot easier. And on that note, Kayla and I have created this form and the property condition disclosure as a template to be used to send to sellers so that they can fill this out digitally. So they don't have to print it out and type. So that is coming. Second page of it just has like the school's favorite aspect of the neighborhood where they can put their utilities, who they use for everything, and why they are moving. This is a living document, I like to say. If you feel like there's something that buyers ask all the time that should be on this or could be on this, I don't really want it to go much longer than 2 pages, if at all, but we can certainly add more detail to it if there are important things that we're missing. Okay, any questions on that document? Moving on. So this is one of those new forms that the MLS is having us do. This document is required for all listings. Now, the difference between this and the listing agreement, this is kind of like a summary page of your listing agreement. This has to be sent to the MLS within 72 hours of signing. Now, you can normally, in the past, we were able to take a listing and sign it and then send everything, not send the listing live for like a month while we're working with the sellers to get the house ready. This one has to be in the moment you sign it. And you know that you're taking listing. So that doesn't mean it has to go live. Correct. So thank you, Kayla. You have to write in the special conditions why it's not immediately going live. So, if you're taking the listing and you've signed this and the listing date is, approximately, May 31st, 30 days after May 31st. And it's not even May 1st yet. We have to write in the special conditions. Sellers need to repaint the whole house and, finish some touch-ups in the kitchen. Won't be ready for showings until the end of May. You have to write in the special conditions why they're not going live right away and why you're signing the listing, but not putting it on the market for showings. That is different than a coming soon listing, which in reality, I don't really want us to do unless there's a really good reason for it. Coming soon listings are just confusing in general, so we can have another conversation about that another time if you're ever considering it. This is just kind of a notice to the multiple listing service that a property is coming on the market. It won't go live in the multiple listing service. This is just for data. Yes, it is redundant. Yes, I apologize. You're going to have to repeat all of this information in Paragon when you go to actually list the property. We are working on asking the MLS to automate this a little bit better so that you can maybe create the partial with this information, but not send it live. But just know that we're working on it. A lot of this stuff is a little bit of a moving target as the merge is being finalized and the new MLS is being fleshed out. But this is a required document. MLS number, obviously, you're not going to have unless you're literally signing this the day that you're listing it. So don't worry about MLS number, property address, city, state, zip, obviously, the names of the seller, whether it's an exclusive right to sell or an exclusive agency in this company, you will always have an exclusive right to sell. We do not do exclusive agency. It's a modified for sale by owner listing. Essentially, the seller will retain the right to sell it on their own and not owe a commission. We don't do that. Okay. Your list price, your listing date. Again, because you're filling out this form, I'm perfectly fine with that being an approximate date, saying about May 31st or yeah. They don't want you to put a TBD on there. They want, even if you state in the special conditions, I would put an approximate date that you're targeting and put in the special conditions why it's further out than, the moment you sign it, but at least throw them a bone and try and hit a target date. If it moves, they're not coming after us to, why are you not on the market yet? As of right now, we don't believe that that is being policed in that way. So put a date that you're targeting and try and hit that date. If they, say, hey, you were supposed to get this property on the market, what's going on? We'll get an extension from the sellers in writing or something like that. But try to put a date, even if you put approximately May 31st. Expiration date of the listing. We haven't gotten a whole lot of guidance as brokers as how to fill this out specifically. I am okay with two things. One, if you're doing an approximate listing date of May 31st and you're doing a 6-month listing, do approximately, you can write in there approximately June, July, August, or October, November 30th, or and put in parentheses 6 months, because you can write in these and there's no like automated, it does give you a little bit of flexibility there. So just be as honest and as upfront as possible about the dates and the information that you're putting in, and I think that we'll be fine. And I will defend and fend off any questions or complaints from the MLS. Uh, the commission structure, obviously, always offering 2.5% as a company policy, as an offer of cooperation, unless we're getting written authorization from me to offer less. My philosophy, the company policy in theory is you guys all get frustrated when you're a buyer's agent and you see somebody putting 2% down or less than 2.5% down. Don't do that to somebody else. If you want to negotiate your commission on the listing end, we can talk about that. Don't discount the buyer's agent's pay because you want to secure a listing at a lower price. So again, that's all on a case by case basis, but company policy and procedures says that we always offer 2.5%. And as a listing agent, as long as you're offering or taking the listing for at least 5%, you don't need to get prior authorization from me. There are very, very specific cases where I may allow a listing to be taken for less than 5, but that is a case by case basis and typically needs to be in writing from me. So broker's agent and a buyer's agent are essentially, we're treating them the same. That should always be the 2.5%. Sub agency is always 0. Does anybody remember or everybody remember what the difference between a broker's agent, a buyer's agent, and a sub agent are? Okay. Very briefly, buyer's agent is obviously somebody that's fully, it's where the fiduciary duty lies, right? So a buyer's agent, your fiduciary duty is fully on to the buyer. A broker's agent means that somebody is not signed to the buyer. Their fiduciary is to the seller, but they're also not signed with the seller. So our company is taking on vicarious liability for that other agent, and the seller is not liable for the actions of that agent. So to put it into perspective, that's why we don't do sub-agency. Sub-agency means that the agent is acting as a fiduciary of the seller, and the seller is vicariously liable, has vicarious liability for that agent. So you don't want your seller to have liability for an agent that they've never met that's just coming to show their property. That's what sub-agency is. We don't do that. We don't offer a commission for that. If an agent is not signed with their buyer and they're just acting as, a broker's agent, we'll take on the liability as a company with, a real estate license and E&O insurance, but we're not passing that on to the seller at all. It's kind of confusing. Nobody really uses sub-agency, but just know that when you put things in the MLS, it's always broker's agent and buyer's agent as 2.5, and sub-agency is 0. And any questions, we can handle that outside of if and when you take a listing, if you're confused about that. Listing agent, who you are, the firm, obviously. Photo owner, Christy takes all of our photos. Those photos are owned as a combination by Christy, the broker, and the seller. So you check off combination, you check off all of them, but really combination is the key. Special conditions, again, if there's any special market conditions or if there are, again, if you're not listing it right away, special market conditions being along the lines of if it's going to be third-party approval, if it's going to be, a short sale, anything like that, if there's already a 48-hour on it, anything and everything will go there. But, the big one is why it's not being listed right away, if that's the case. Okay. And then you and the seller will sign that. Any questions on that form? Once that form is complete, it will be part of the process of the listing agent to email that to that email address you see at the bottom there in blue, LNF listing notification form at globalmls.com. That is the responsibility of the agent taking the listing. So please make sure you are doing that. It would be a good idea to blind carbon copy or carbon copy me on that email that you send, so I know that those are going out. This will also be required. I'm going to update paperless pipeline, so this will be a required piece of a transaction in paperless pipeline. This is a newly required form. It is in zip form. As of right now, it is not in the fillable PDF because we talked about that there's a lot. So this one you're going to have to print out for now. Kayla and I will also be working on trying to get as many of these into DocuSign as possible until the MLS can, work on this in zip forms. So just know that we're working on it. Any questions? Any other questions? Okay. Yes. April 15th. So did you list Scattercoke after? Technically, you're fine then. It would not be a bad idea to just get this signed and let them know that this is a new document that went into effect. Um, but you're technically fine because you signed on the 14th. I would say that that's a decent gray area that we can, but I would probably retroactively get it signed just to be safe and send it in. So agency disclosure is obviously still part of your listing agreement. This is the new exclusive right to sell listing agreement. It is very similar, if not almost identical to the old one. We are fine to be using this. Okay. Um, it's the purchase contract that all the brokers have some issues with, and we're going to continue to use the Eastern New York Regional contract for now until further notice. But for the exclusive right to sell, we should be using this one from now on. Okay. At the top here, same listing office, seller, property address. Listing office is us, obviously, Romeo Team Realty. Seller's name, property address. The exclusive right to sell for X dollars from 2 dates. Typically, again, as a company, we try and always take a 6-month listing. If you need to take less, it's a good idea to run it by me as to why first. Paragraph 2. I'll go through some of these as if I'm explaining it to a seller as well, and please feel free to stop and ask questions. Paragraph 2, we have to abide by all local, state, and federal fair housing laws. So we can't discriminate against anybody that wants to come in the property and see it, as long as they are pre-qualified. The only color that we say we can discriminate against is green, right? So you have the money. The Global Multiple Listing Service is not an agent. They are not liable. Basically, that's a disclosure to the seller saying that they can't go after the MLS for a breach of fiduciary. Use of listing content. So the MLS is trying to be really specific and CYA on the use of seller's information. So this is also kind of like that paragraph in the old listing agreement about all the photos. So the seller's agreeing to allow us to use all of the property photos and all of the information that we're taking and blast it out all over the internet. And the seller is understanding that they're giving us the right to do that. Possession of a key to the property. This is an interesting one. So this is covering us a little bit more than the other listing agreement used to. Basically, that the seller understands that by providing us a key, that does not make us property managers. Okay, just because we have a key and a lockbox to the property does not mean that we are responsible for maintenance on the property, for notifying the seller that there's any maintenance that needs to be done on the property, for, if it floods, if a pipe breaks, anything like that, even if the property is vacant. The seller is still fully responsible for maintaining the property and making sure that it is in good repair, snow removal, all of that stuff. We may do that as a kindness, but we are not liable for the condition of the property just because we have the right to a key. Okay, so that's a good addition that they added in there that was not fleshed out in the previous listing agreement. And Amanda, if you have anything to add at any point about any of these, please jump in. Paragraph 6, the seller's authorizations and obligations. This is similar to the other one. The seller is understanding that they're giving us the right to put a lockbox on the property, and they're taking ownership of any damages arising from the use of the lockbox. That's also why we try and use the electronic lockboxes at all times. It is way too easy for somebody, a buyer or a customer that's not signed with an agent, to lean over an agent's shoulder and take a look at the combination, remember it, and come back and do some damage to a property. Electronic lockboxes are much more secure. Only licensees have the right to access them unless we give somebody specific permission to. And we are notified at all times of anybody accessing it. As a company policy, I try and use electronic lock boxes at all times. We will switch out after a contract is underway, so that appraisers can access if they don't have electronic access, and that's okay. But for general showings, while the property is open for showings, we should really be using electronic lock boxes at all times. Sellers giving us the right to use the photographs of the property, placement of a sign, and all the property information on the internet. Basically, they're letting us take all of their information and blast it at everybody, so everybody in the world knows that we're for sale, to better market and sell their property. Paragraph 7, presentation of the listing or purchase offer. They're going to check that they deny a request. Reason being, they don't want a buyer's agent coming in and presenting an offer from their clients to them. That's why they hired us, to give them that buffer between other agents and buyers. Okay, so they deny having a buyer's agent present. That's also a practice that happens in other areas of the country that really never happens here. So it seems silly, but we have it in there. Paragraph 8, the seller understands that a buyer is likely going to be contingent upon financing in order to purchase their home. Paragraph 9, the seller is giving us the right to take the earnest money deposit and hold it on the buyer's behalf and their behalf in our escrow account. Remind the sellers that that is never their money unless the buyer is found to be in breach of contract and agrees to release that money to them. It is very hard to retain somebody's earnest money deposit if the buyer is really going to stick their feet in the ground. Similarly, that's always the buyer's money. It goes back to them at closing, right? Paragraph 10, inspection. The seller understands that a buyer is likely going to be contingent upon inspection of the property and that they're going to give access for the buyer to obtain inspections. Paragraph 11, the seller agrees that the terms of the purchase may be disclosed to all members of the global multiple listing service upon closing. So we no longer need to initial I agree, I do not agree there. Basically, we don't disclose the terms of the purchase until closing. Obviously, if we're in a multiple offer situation and it's to the seller's benefit to disclose where our offers are, that is always allowed. Working in the best interest of the seller is always allowed. Agents try and tell you that their purchase contract is confidential. That is not true. And we can go over that in an entire other training if we need to. But you are allowed to disclose where offers are and where your best offer is if it's working in the best interest of the seller to solicit a better offer and better terms. So yeah, we can do a whole training on multiple offers and how to handle them in a multiple offer best practice. That's definitely a good one. Kayla will make note of that. We have a running list now. Paragraph 12 lays out the commission, same as the other contract. So commission of X percentage. Again, if it's anything 5 or greater, you're fine to put whatever you want in there. It's negotiated between you and the seller. Or a flat fee. I try not and take less than $2,500 flat on any listing. So if you're getting into the, I'm listing a property for $50,000, you can put a flat number in there to make that a little bit easier so that you're not working for pennies. Don't have to, but you can. Broker's agent commission, this is what was on the listing notification form. This is that redundancy, and I apologize, but that all goes in there. Jump down to paragraph B there. The expiration, the protection period. Protection period. As a company policy, 3 months is our protection period. Now, what does that mean? That means if the listing were to expire, but somebody who saw the property during the period of the listing agreement comes back within 3 months after the expiration date of the listing and wants to purchase, we are still owed a commission. Doesn't mean we can say, great, send us the check. We got to come in and do the job, right? Because the terms of the listing agreement would still hold. So what that's preventing is somebody coming in, your listing expires on April 30th, right? And somebody comes in on April 29th, loves the property. They come back, they knock on the seller's door after hours and say, hey, I saw your home with my agent today. I really love it. I noticed your listing is about to expire. Let's wait a week. I want to buy it. We'll cut the agents out of it and make it a better deal for both of us. They can't do that. That's what the protection period is for. You can sue them for performance. You can sue them for the commission. Absolutely. Yep. You can absolutely sue them for the commission. Now, whether or not it's worth our time to do that is another conversation and dealt with on a case by case basis. But when you explain this to a seller, that is how you explain it. It's preventing somebody from trying to cut the agents out of it who have performed and done their job. Now, if our listing expires on the 30th and they sign with a new agent May 1st, this is null and void. It becomes null and void if they enter into a new agency relationship with another agent. Then if they haven't signed it, and again, the buyer has to have seen it during the period of the listing. They can't come in on the first and see it and just like that would suck, but they would be within their legal rights to accept an offer without you. But if somebody showed it or saw it with either their agent or not during the period of your contract, came back within 3 months after the expiration and the seller is not signed with another agency, you theoretically, your marketing procured that buyer and you would be owed a commission. That's how the law sees it. Correct. Correct. It would be really hard to fight it then. It would be really hard to fight it. You'd have to prove to the current listing agent that you're the one that procured the buyer, and how are you ever going to find that out? You know what I mean? It's And again, at that point, then you're not only going after the seller, you're going after the other listing agent for the commission that they're going to claim as theirs because they've done work. And it's just that falls in my mind under the category of the cost of doing business, because where if that may happen to you, it's going to happen and you're going to be the benefit of that someday too. It's all going to work itself out in the end. It's protecting the seller from trying to, it's protecting the agent from the seller trying to cut agents out of the equation when the agent has performed and done their job according to the terms of the contract. Okay. And most sellers will understand that. They'll be like, oh my God, I'd never do that. You know what I mean? Most sellers will like be appalled at that idea. So I never really have problems explaining that. And I tell them it's null and void if you sign with another company. This is only protecting me, if somebody is trying to cut us out of it. Paragraph 13, this is another one of those redundancies because there's another page paper that says this, but this is the MLS putting in there a disclosure to the seller about the property condition disclosure. There is another form called disclosure to the seller on the property condition disclosure, and this is telling them that if they don't by law provide this to the buyer as a courtesy, that they owe them $500 at closing. So they're going to sign that about 4 times. Rental of the property, if your seller is not interested in renting at all, you can cross that paragraph out. But for example, I have a listing right now that we're signing a new listing agreement and they are open to putting it on the market for rent. This is where we can stipulate how much I'd be owed in a rental commission, and not having to sign a new agreement. That being said, there is no rental listing agreement from what I can see for the global MLS. So if you're only listing a rental, this is the form. Is there? All right, so I didn't see it in zip form, which is where I was looking. So we'll come back to that. If there is, we'll go over that another time. But this is, you can put that in there as a protection for you if your seller is open to renting. 1 month's rent. And that would include splitting that with a buyer, or it would theoretically be a tenant's agent. So half of 1 month's rent is typically what we pull, but honestly, can you go get my charger? Oh, poop. There isn't. It's at home. Yeah. I love that we're recording this right now too. No, we may have to pause this, guys. No, I'm not freaking out. I'm just gonna pause. Oh, Jackie, I'm gonna pause it for a second, and I'm gonna run and get something. So, okay, we're back. Sorry about that, everybody. We have power. Okay. What paragraph? Rental of the property. Okay, legal, professional, and technical advice. This is another good addition, I think, to the listing agreement. This is the MLS protecting us, saying that and disclosing to the sellers, while we are your expert in the real estate process, we are not an expert in legal matters, tax matters, um, inspections, et cetera, et cetera. So we can point you in the right direction, but you should be wary of taking our advice on anything that we are not qualified to give you an opinion on. Because sellers will ask us all the time, like, oh, should I do this? As an example, is this a great 1031 exchange? Like, I don't know. I'm not your tax professional. You need to go speak with your CPA. So this is just that kind of CYA. You understand that while we can point you in the right direction, we are not a platform for legal, professional, technical, or other trade advice outside of performing a real estate transaction. Screw up the purchase contract? No idea. No idea. That's an excellent question. Paragraph 16, the Home Equity Theft and Prevention Act, just like before, this is the seller warranting that they, to the best of their knowledge, are not upside down on their loan. So there's nobody that would need a third-party approval. There's no current foreclosure proceedings or short sale proceedings, et cetera, tax liens, yada, yada. So the seller is likely going to be checking is not. A question that was asked yesterday, which I will go over, is do we pre-populate this for the sellers or have them check it? For paragraphs like this, and for example, the lead-based paint disclosure, where it's very likely going to be, no, I have no knowledge and no, I have no reports, you can pre-populate it with the checkbox, because when you make them choose, unless you're going through it with them, they don't always realize that they have to check one of those boxes. You can pre-populate it if you're doing an electronic signature with that check mark on is not. What I would make sure you then do is when you're on the phone or if you're emailing it to them, in the message say, please note that on paragraph 16, I've indicated that you are not upside down on your loan. Please let me know if any of the information on this page or the lead-based paint disclosure is untrue, and I will, get those corrections over to you. So, and on the phone with them, if you're doing a digital signature and you're going through this, that's how I would present it to them. I've indicated here that you're not upside down on your loan. There's no current foreclosure or tax lien proceedings on your property. Is that true to the best of your knowledge? Then we'll keep it like this. Please let me know if that is not true, and we will change this right away. So just making sure that you're going over it and calling their attention to what you've pre-populated for them, in which case then you're fine. Amanda, would you agree with that's an okay way to do it? Okay. I always double check things with Amanda as our attorney. Paragraph 17, termination. Obviously, New York is still an at-will state. They have the full right and opportunity to fire us if they're unhappy with our services. We would retain in that case, the right to reimbursement for any expenses. As a general company policy, I don't ask for reimbursement of expenses, and I don't I'll almost always give an unconditional release to let them go. I don't want the bad press. It's bad business in my opinion. But if there's really a situation where a seller has really screwed you over and it would be, worth it to ask, hey, can I get $500 back or $1,500 back for here's all the marketing that I've done? We certainly can have a conversation about that. But when I explain it to sellers, I usually tell them I will let you go with an unconditional release as long as we have a certain understanding that if you're unhappy for whatever reason, you're going to tell me, because I promise that it's my goal in life to make you happy, because then you go tell all of your friends that I'm the best real estate agent you've ever worked with and they should use me for their listing. Because if you're not unhappy, if you are unhappy, you're not happy with your listing, you're going to tell all your friends that I'm the worst real estate agent and they need to steer clear from me. So give me the opportunity to make it right. If after I've had the opportunity to make it right, it just feels like we're not meshing and it's not working out, I'll let you go with an unconditional. Paragraph 18, the seller reasonably understands what they're signing. Paragraph 19 is like that box in the other one. That's where the seller is indicating that they understand that this is an exclusive right to sell, not an exclusive agency. The way I describe that is you're indicating that you understand this is an exclusive right to sell listing agreement, not an exclusive agency, which is a modified for sale by owner listing, which we don't do. We are a full service company. Never had anybody argue about that when I present it that way. We're a full service company. That's all they need to know. Paragraph 20, default, and that kind of, once again, I like that they kind of took away all of the crazy, like, here's what happened. Like in the old listing agreement, I had like 3 paragraphs of, here are all the crazy scenarios where I might go after you, or we have to have a conversation about what happens to the commission. I think that, again, like Amanda said, it's crazy that this document, I really feel, was modified for the better, and the purchase contract was just, I don't know what happened to it. Yeah. So they've taken all of those scary paragraphs and put them into one at the bottom of the listing agreement that just says, if any party is in default and there is a dispute on the commission, we agree to hold it in the county clerk's office until we can get it professionally mediated and decide what to do with it. Okay. So this is where the agent will sign on behalf of the brokerage, put the firm name. You can put prepared by if any of you ever take an assistant on, like for mine, Kayla can put her name for prepared by if she's preparing my listing documents for me. So just letting anybody know who prepared the document. Off the top of my head, to prepare contracts, yes, you must be a licensee. So, right. But I hear what you're saying over there. Any questions on the listing agreement? Thoughts, questions, comments, concerns you want me to pass along? I personally think this was fairly well done. Okay. It's a little bit better and easier to read, isn't it? Property condition disclosure, I'm not going to go over this again because it's pretty self-explanatory. Again, you're giving this to the seller to fill out. You are not directing them how to fill it out. It is a buyer beware situation still. The seller can't be found legally liable for the information contained within it unless somebody can prove that they intentionally lied, which, as Amanda will tell you, is extremely hard to do in a court of law. So just tell them if they don't know the answer, circle unknown. It's perfectly acceptable. This is that property condition disclosure to the seller regarding the property condition disclosure statement. So again, they're signing their life away that if they don't, I don't know why. The only thing I don't understand is why we still have this document if it's already in the listing agreement now. I'm going to double check with some attorneys and with the multiple listing service. I'm wondering if, because if we use the new listing agreement, if we can scrap this page, because I really feel that it's redundant. It's required until further notice, yes. Currently it's required, but I don't know that it was before. Or I mean, it was before because it wasn't in the listing agreement. I don't know that it is now, is what I need to say. This is another document that is the same as it was before, just with the global MLS across the top of it, saying, it's pretty much written in plain English. It's disclosing to the seller that they are never under any obligation to accept any offer at any time ever. Doesn't matter if it's the first offer in, they don't owe anybody the first right of refusal. Doesn't matter if it's a full cash offer. It doesn't matter if it's a cash offer over asking. They are not under any obligation. They can accept whatever offer they want, whenever they want. And the only time it's legally binding is when it's signed and executed by both parties and ratified by their attorneys. This is the carbon monoxide and smoke detector disclosure form. This is the same as before. However, what is different? Not on this form, but this is a good opportunity to have a conversation with your sellers. On April 15th, New York State actually passed a new law. And it's going to carry over to FHA loans, VA loans, and even potentially some conventional loans. So this is a good opportunity when going over this form to have a conversation with your seller about this new law. When you sell a house now, unless your carbon monoxide or unless your smoke detectors, I should say, are hardwired into your house, you must have sealable 10-year lithium ion battery smoke detectors. So you cannot, and they're new. You can't, it means you can't take off the back and replace the battery. You have to replace the whole unit. It is a safety measure so that what people were doing was when the smoke alarm would go off because the battery was low, they'd take out the battery and never replace it. And then people were dying in fires because no one was telling, like there was no smoke alarm. So you have one as an example, Amanda. That's really funny. So now you can go to Home Depot. I'll show you. They sell, I just did this for my personal sale. Yeah, they are 10-year sealable. Sealable battery. Awesome. Nope, not that one. Where is it? Not that one. There's a 3-pack. I have to find it somewhere because I just got them at Home Depot and it's a business here. Oh, here it is. This one. There's a 3-pack here for $50. It brings them to just under, and they are available in store at Home Depot. And it brings them to just under $15 or about $15 a smoke detector. I had Birch Lane was a 5-bedroom home, so technically I needed to have one in each bedroom and then one in the main common area on the first floor. So I needed 6, so I bought 2 of these for $100 and I'm legally compliant now. So please be notifying your seller that this is a New York State law that just went into effect April 15th. And I'm surprised that we haven't heard anything about it from our association, from NYSAR or whatnot, but it is a law. So, and if a seller kicks, but I don't have like, it is worth it to be in compliant because God forbid, you don't want somebody coming back. You don't want anybody to be surprised by this. Just go to Home Depot, go get them. And if they want a discount, Melissa will buy them at a discount for them. Protect yourself from lead in your home. We could probably make one. Maybe would you be able to help design some sort of like an informational flyer for this new law? Just a flyer that basically. Okay, I'll put you 2 on that. Correct. But you rent, so your landlord, your landlord is required now to provide those, I believe. So you may not need to get a battery. Your landlord may actually need to replace it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's a new thing, and I'm taking the opportunity now to make sure we all know about it. Okay. So I'm glad you already knew about that, Melissa. Good job. But Melissa's always in the know. Next page, lead-based paint, same as before, nothing has changed. As the seller, please make sure that, or the listing agent, you are initialing here. I see so many agents when they list not initial this because they think the buyer's agent is supposed to initial it. No, you as the listing agent initial here that you've disclosed to the seller their duties and obligations. Most sellers have no knowledge and they have no reports pertaining to lead-based paint. As the buyer's agent, your buyers are going to initial C, D, and check off whether they're receiving their opportunity or waiving it. Most buyers waive. There's a digital version of it. We have it, and it's in our company documents. Kayla's going through and reorganizing all of them, and I'll show you something soon. Our next thing is we're almost done, and then we'll go into our thing that I haven't told you about yet. Seller has not provided reports to the buyer. Okay, so that's all the same, and everybody signs. In-house sales, this has not changed. Basically, as a company, we have lots of different agents. If Amanda Sinrod is listing a property and Melissa brings the buyer, technically it's considered dual agency within and an in-house sale within Romeo Team Realty. That situation would be considered dual agency with designated agents, which is a perfectly reasonable way to handle a real estate transaction. Amanda Sinrod would be completely liable and a fiduciary of her seller, have no involvement with the buyer at all. Melissa would have a full fiduciary relationship with the buyer, have no involvement with the seller at all, and I, as the broker, would be a dual agent and overseeing it. In those scenarios, the seller and the buyer have rights. They can ask for new representation outside of the company. They could ask that the other party gets representation outside of the company, or with fully informed consent, they may enter into a dual agency with designated agents scenario or any form of dual agency. What I tell buyers and sellers is that if this scenario comes into play, we will go back over this document and review their rights. Melissa and I have had a conversation about this document. It has the right idea. It has a really terrible execution. So we're probably going to make one that's Romeo Team Realty specific that we'll review by our in-house attorney. But essentially, it's saying that be aware that when you list your property for sale, we're taking all the information about your property and blasting it to the multiple listing service, which syndicates to lots of third-party sites. We have no control over the way that third-party sites scrub and use the information that we have put out there. So where does this come into play? Think about Zillow, right? We've thrown all of our information on Zillow. Zillow has pulled it. The listing comes down, the property comes off the market, but yet the photos are still there. We have no control to get those photos removed from Zillow. That is not within our power. This is disclosing to sellers that once we put their information about their home out onto the internet, we can't always control how third-party sites scrape the information. However, the way that this reads, it says, as a result, sometimes we find it difficult, if not impossible, to change, update, or remove your information, which makes the seller feel like we're not throwing out their social security numbers on the internet. But that's kind of how it reads. So we're probably going to it's not a bad disclosure to have. Good idea. I think a poor execution. I'd like to create a new document we can do Romeo Team Realty instead of Global MLS that sort of conveys this in a little bit more clarity, so that sellers don't get the idea that they're giving us the right to take all their personal information and blast it out everywhere. Even their full names, even though it's public record, we don't throw out on the internet. So anyway, just going over that. You do not have to sign this right now. If we do, not required right now. This is a good addition, addendum to the contract for HOA, homeowners association covenants or restrictions. If you take a listing with a condo or a development that has an HOA, this is another one similar to the property condition disclosure where you're going to provide this to the seller. They're going to check off all the things that they have. If they have none of that information, they will check off none of that information, and then it's buyer beware. Here's the contact info for the homeowners association, because homeowners pay dues. They're going to at least have that information. And it's disclosing to the buyer we're part of an HOA or we have deed restrictions on our property, and you can go find the information for yourself, or here's how you find it. Okay. I'll tell you the way that I read this. No, they don't. It says within 7 days of acceptance of the contract, the seller will provide the buyer with a copy of the following as checked. If they don't have copies of any of that, they can't provide it. I mean, that's where we as the agent step in and say, my seller did not check off any of this information because he does not have any of it. We've provided the contact information for the homeowners association and suggest that you reach out to them for copies of any of the pertinent documents. No, just if it's not checked, we provide this as part of the associated documents with any listing that has anything like this. So this is, again, check. I'll use an example. So Southbury Road off exit 8, Old Coach Road, all of those homes in that development has no HOA. However, every single one of those homes is subject to deed restrictions and covenants regarding the look of the property, those townhomes on the outside. Some sellers don't know. If you know that that's like a dead giveaway is when you go into a new construction development and if there's an HOA or a water retention pond, they're going to have something. But if there's no money paid to any sort of HOA, but you drive into a neighborhood and all the houses look the same, and they all have the same type of siding or they all have the same color siding, it's usually a dead giveaway that somewhere in the deed are deed restrictions and covenants regarding the use of the property or the look of the property in the neighborhood. There's like 100-page deed restriction and covenant on that neighborhood that the seller may or may not have, but the attorney should have. And it will pull up in a title search, so they'll be able to see it. But just try and do your best to know. But again, if the seller doesn't have it, they can't provide it. So if there's no homeowners association, again, this is going to pull up in a title search anyway. Both. So if it's short enough, like let's use Third Avenue as an example. I have a condo, my Powers Park Loft condo. They have a huge like HOA binder, like document that we have out on the counter. We also have it in digital form. We provide that in the listing. However, there's a brief like rules and regulations sheet that is a little bit quicker of a snapshot that we have in the binder, or we can put in the binder. No, we do not make anything. If they have a summary version, if they have a short and sweet version that you can leave out and put somewhere, great. That's always very helpful. But if they don't, just having a copy out, and that's how a lot of them have it. A lot of people don't, like Knox Woods. I don't know any of them that have digital copies of their HOA. It's always like a little binder like that thick, and it's usually out on the counter. So provide it in whatever way you have it. Jackie, just checking in. You're still there, right? Okay, cool. Just making sure we didn't lose you. My phone's on silent. Okay. Next document, another good addition, closed pool hot tub irrigation disclosure. So when you have a property that you are listing and it's in either a new construction development where they have underground sprinklers or a pool or a hot tub, these things are supposed to be winterized and closed down every year. I don't know that most people with sprinkler systems realize that. I don't care if your seller has for the last 50 years opened and closed their own pool by themselves. For the year that they are selling their property, they are going to close that pool down with Concord Pools or Jackie's dad or somebody so that they can get a professional receipt that says I professionally shut this down, and when I closed it down, it was in full working order. Why? Because that prevents any buyer in the winter from saying, I want you to hold $15,000 back in escrow because if I open my pool and realize that the liner's ripped, I want a new one. It's happened. So then that's when we can hand them this disclosure. This does give an opportunity for the seller to say, I closed it down myself, but it's not a good idea. I would have your seller, it's like Jackie, I don't know what your dad charged. It's like $100 or something like that. It's not, yeah, it's not that expensive to get a professional company to close down the pool, and it is worth the $100, even $200, so that they don't have to leave $5,000 of their hard-earned money in equity in escrow for the buyer to decide whenever they want to open up that pool and decide to argue something. It's a legal mess. So have them sign this and have them get receipts from a professional company. So if you know you're going to take a listing in the fall and you know it has a pool, be warning them to shut it down that year with a professional company. Same goes for AC. Have them get a company out to service the AC right before the end of the summer and shut it down. So that way, same thing happens for, air conditioning. Oh, we can't touch the test the air conditioning. We want money in escrow just in case the air conditioning is kaput. No, we shut it down. This is the company that serviced it right before the end of the year. It was fully operational. Here's our receipt. In general, it's not a required document, but I would say that it's required if your property has a pool or a hot tub or some sort of an irrigation system. These are best practices that really are out there to protect your seller. I have this on here. We don't need to fill this out. This is Energy Star Efficiency Profile. I think that this is going to be a lot more common as we move into the world of solar, wind power, things like that. We're not using this just yet, but it's there if for whatever reason your seller wants to provide a ton of information. But I'm not 1,000% sure on how to even fill it out. Yeah, they're trying, this is moving in that direction. They're trying to give us an opportunity or a place to be able to advertise all that stuff. It's not fully fleshed out yet. This is not required. If your seller is really into the energy efficiency of their property, this is definitely something you can hand to them and say, would you like to fill this out? But this is not a required document. I didn't even print it out in your packets. I just had it, or maybe I did. I don't think I did. Because I'm not worried about it. I don't want you to worry about it. I'm just going over it because it's there if you want to provide it to your seller who is really jonesing over the fact that they got solar. Okay. It's true. They are out there. Any questions on any of that? Because that's all the new listing documentation. No, they're all still PDF forms right now. So like I said, for right now, you can use the old disclosures until that either gets worked on or Kayla and I have the opportunity to go and add all these to DocuSign, which we may start using DocuSign templates more than the zip form ones. The new listing agreement is, you mean zip form?
Yeah.
Listing notification and the listing agreement are in zip form. Oh, you put them in DocuSign? Oh, the listing notification, no, but the listing agreement is definitely, you can fill it out in zip form. I just did it.
The one I did last night was in zip form.
You're confusing me because you're using DocuSign and zip form interchangeably, and I don't think that you mean to be. Yes, zip form has the new listing agreement and.
But it's not format.
Yeah, it is. Let's check. I'm gonna stop recording.
On that note,
Recording over. No, it's okay.